وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Ya Allah, you are the one who has all the praise. You are the one who
Ya
has
Allah, Anda
the
yang
right to receive
memiliki
all the
segala
praise. You are the one who has the right to receive
puji-pujian
all the
dan
thanks.
hak
You are
menerima
the one who
segala
has all the government. In your
pujian-pujian.
hands all the virtues. To you all matters returned. Pour out your grace and mercy on the ceremony held today. Bless it from the beginning to the end. We also seek protection from you from all things that can tarnish the reproach of our council and from all things that neglect us from obeying you. To you only we live all of our affairs. اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل اللهم فينا ولا معنا ولا من يتبعون شقيا ولا مطرودا ولا محروما اللهم اجعل خير أعمالنا آخره وخير أعمالنا خواتمه وخير أيامنا يوم ألقاك فيه اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وللإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Amin ya Rabbal Alamin. Ladies and gentlemen,
Tuan-tuan
we are
dan
gathered
puan-puan,
here today,
kita
united by a
berdiri
common mission,
atas
strengthening
misi yang
rights
sama,
and safeguarding futures.
memperkuatkan hak kanak-kanak
Children's
dan
rights
menjaga
are
masa
not
depan.
merely a matter of legal obligation.
Hak
They are the
kanak-kanak bukan sahaja
foundation upon which the future of
tanggungjawab
humanity is
undang-undang,
built. By prioritizing and safeguarding the rights of children today,
hak
we are
manusia
shaping the
tepat di pelahari
trajectory
dengan
of
menjaga
future
hak kanak-kanak hari
generations.
ini.
Every decision we make,
Segala
every
keputusan
action
yang kita
we
buat,
take
segala
to
perbuatan yang
uphold
kita
the
buat
rights of children
adalah untuk
contribute
mengangkat
to
hak
creating a
kanak-kanak
world
dan
that is more just,
menyumbangkan kepada
equitable,
dunia yang
and
lebih
compassionate for all.
sama
Enshrined
rata
within the
kepada
United
semua orang.
Nations Convention
Dalam
on the Rights of the
United Nations
Child,
Convention on the Rights of the Child,
this
CRC,
globally ratified treaty outlines four essential
hak yang
principles:
telah dipersetujui secara global ini
the best
adalah
interests of the child,
untuk menjaga
the right
hak
to
kanak-kanak
life,
yang
survival and
sebaiknya,
development, and the
hak
child's
untuk
right to express their views and
membesar
have them
dan
considered
pembangunan,
in matters
dan
affecting them.
supaya pendapat
Hence, to
mereka
commence
didengari
our
atas perkara
event,
yang
we have the privilege
mengesan
of
kepada mereka.
inviting Dr. Mikiko
Kita
Otani.
telah
Dr.
berbesar hati dapat
Otani is not only a distinguished expert in this field,
menjemput Dr.
but is
Mikiko
also the
Otani
former
yang juga
chair of the United Nations Committee on the
chair
Rights
kepada
of the
United
Child.
Nations Committee of the
Her groundbreaking work
on the Rights of
and
the Child.
unwavering advocacy have
Kerjanya dalam
significantly contributed to the
memperkasakan
advancement
hal
of
ini
children's rights
dalam
worldwide.
menyumbang
Today,
kepada
it is
pembangunan
with
hak
great
kanak-kanak
honor
seluruh
that we
dunia.
welcome her to deliver
Dengan
her
segala
keynote
hormatnya
speech
kita
via Zoom,
menjemputnya
offering
untuk memberikan
invaluable
ucapan
insights and
di Zoom
perspective on the critical importance of
untuk
protecting
memberikan
and promoting children's rights. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. Mikiko Otani.
Dr. Mikiko Otani.
Honorable Dato Sri Azalina Ottoman State,
berbahagia Dato Sri Azalina Osman,
I'm sorry. Honorable Dato Sri Azalina Binti Ottoman State, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department on Law and Institutional Reform, other ministers, Dr. Fatimi Yusufi, Children's Commissioner of Malaysia, distinguished participants, colleagues, friends, and children, good morning. It is a great honor to address the opening ceremony of this important international symposium on children's commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts on this topic. Last year, we commemorated the 75th anniversary of the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations General Assembly. The United Nations proclaimed that everyone is entitled to all the rights in the Declaration. This promise was elevated to legal obligations of states by the adoption of a series of UN human rights treaties, including the Convention on the Rights of the Child. States that ratified the treaties accepted the legal obligations to realize human rights by undertaking all appropriate legislative, administrative, and other measures for the implementation of the rights recognized in the treaties. What is significant about the UN human rights treaties is the international monitoring system. The UN human rights treaty bodies, such as the Committee on the Rights of the Child, periodically reviews the implementation of the treaties by the state parties. Treaty bodies identify gaps in implementation and make recommendations of measures to address those gaps. States are requested to implement those recommendations. This is how the international human rights standards are to be realized. Obviously, the key is implementation by states. Responsibilities of implementation rest on states. But then, within the states, which bodies of states are responsible for implementation? Parliament as legislative body, government as administrative body, and court as judicial body. Is this enough? To answer to this question, I would say no. The United Nations has come to realize the need of the national system to promote and protect human rights as an important building block for the implementation of international human rights standards. With this recognition, the World Conference on Human Rights, convened by the United Nations in 1993, in the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action, reaffirmed the important and constructive role played by national institutions for the promotion and protection of human rights, and encouraged the establishment and strengthening of national institutions. Such institutions, called national human rights institutions, as a national but independent body, created specifically to promote and protect human rights, should be able to provide advice, report and monitor, handle complaints, and human rights education. The critical importance of the role of national human rights institutions for effective implementation of the international human rights at the national level is equally true to child rights. The Committee on the Rights of the Child thus devoted the General Comment number 2, adopted in 2002, to the topic of the role of independent national human rights institutions in the promotion and protection of the rights of the child. In this general comment, the committee clarified that the establishment of such bodies is part of legal obligation of the state parties to ensure the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Independent national human rights institutions, I would say, are more important for children. It is because children's development state makes them particularly vulnerable to human rights violations. Their opinions are still rarely taken into account. Most children have no vote and are often excluded from the political process that determines the government's response to human rights. Children encounter significant problems and obstacles in accessing the judicial system to protect their rights or to seek remedies for violations of their rights. It is also true that children's access to general national human rights institutions is generally limited. It is the view of the Committee on the Rights of the Child that every state needs a specialist independent human rights institutions for children. It can be Children's Commissioner, Children's Ombudsman, whatever name would be, or one of the commissioners specifically dedicated and responsible for children's rights in the national human rights institutions that cover general human rights issues. But given responsibility specifically for promoting and protecting children's rights, the committee's principal concern is that the institutions, whatever its form, should be able independently and effectively to monitor, promote, and protect children's rights. It is essential that promotion and protection of children's rights is mainstreamed. For this reason, existence and effectiveness of independent institutions for children's rights has always been one of the issues that the Committee on the Rights of the Child pays particular attention in reviewing the country reports. Some of the common challenges we have observed are independence, clear mandate given by law, including receiving and handling complaints from or on behalf of children, accessibility for children, including child-friendly information and procedures, and allocation of sufficient financial, human, and technical resources. I have also noticed that it may not be clearly understood that the coordinating body for implementation of the CRC and the independent mechanism for monitoring children's rights are different, but both are needed. The special and unique role that the independent national institutions for children's rights is increasing globally to address persisting violations of children's rights, as well as growing recognition of relation of certain issues to children's rights. That include poverty, access to and continuation of education, mental health, discrimination on many grounds and in many forms, migration, climate change, digital environment, impact of business activities. To effectively address those serious challenges to children's rights, independent institutions for children's rights should be equipped with clear mandates and resources, and build capacities and exchange experiences among them regionally and globally. In the Asia-Pacific region, specialist independent institutions for children's rights exist only in a small number of countries, including Malaysia. It is high time to seriously discuss and take actions to promote establishment of such institutions in both countries where even no independent national human rights institutions exist yet, and where national human rights institutions for general human rights exist, but not specialist institutions for children. It is really encouraging to see that many specialist independent institutions for children from the region and beyond are participating to discuss various critical issues such as mandates, marginalized children, collaboration with other actors, and other issues at this conference. And children are participating in the symposium is very significant. I wish the fruitful discussion at the symposium so that it will create a momentum to promote creations and strengthenings of the specialized independent institutions for children in every country in the Asia-Pacific region, and creating networking among those institutions. And I hope the Children's Commissioner of Malaysia will play a positive role in this regard. Thank you very much for your attention.
Tone for the symposium and for the next one, the next few hours. Also, ladies and gentlemen, we are thrilled to announce the participation of 55 children aged 10 to 17 years old in this symposium. These children are seated in the middle row of the auditorium. Yes, and they represent a diverse array of communities, including children with disabilities, those from East Asia, those from lower income group communities, children from refugee communities, as well as from sheltered homes. These young participants have embarked on their discussions during a workshop held just yesterday. They have delved into what child rights means to them, identified pertinent issues and potential solutions relevant to their lives, and passionately discuss their dreams and aspirations for a world that caters to the needs of all children. Furthermore, the children have selected 8 representatives from among themselves to take the stage over the next 2 days. These representatives will share the key messages derived from their discussion on various significant topics. This presents us with an incredible opportunity to actually listen directly to children and gain insights into what truly matters to them. Indeed, children's rights are at the heart of our gathering. Their opinion and ideas serve as the guiding force behind the discussions we make. Therefore, without further ado, let us now extend a warm welcome to Ms. Jessie Lee Ji Zing and Mr. Emmanuel Chua Hong Wei as they step forward to deliver their speech.
I wonder where's Jessie? Hey, Jessie, there you are. I've been looking for you.
Emmanuel, where have you been? I've been waiting here for you.
We need to open for this symposium. Don't you remember that?
Well, of course I do. Why else would I be here? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the International Symposium on Empowerment of Children's Commission. So, Emmanuel, do tell, what do you think this event is for?
I believe that this is an excellent platform for engagement between the adults and children and youths of today, and it provides opportunity for us to speak out and advocate for a fair and equitable state.
I do agree with that. Actually, you know, the issues about children's and youth, those need to be explored. I mean, take yesterday for just an example. I was having a conversation with my friends, and during this conversation, we were discussing about the fact on our generation's participation in our nation's framework. And during this conversation, there was just one word that really struck out to me: stakeholders.
Stakeholders?
Yes, stakeholders. Stakeholders are people who have an interest or concern in a state of affair. Our generation's participation is really important, and it needs to be involved in our decision-making processes. Take safety for an example. There are so many dangers and risks that they can differ from physical to mental and even online. So what are the measures, what are the protection measures that can be taken to protect ourselves and these children and our future from these dangers? And is there any way that I myself could be involved in these protection measures? I mean, I would like to know, wouldn't you as well?
Yeah. I actually read a summary of the National Health and Morbidity Survey 2022. that there are about of that access of education system, like, and there are about 20% of teenagers have experienced cyberbullying. And this is actually quite unfortunate. We need awareness and a way to protect, and also how do we cope with this? Like, what about parliamentary representation?
Right. If only we did have a voice to represent us in the parliamentary for children. You know, if I'm not mistaken, I do recall that there was a group of children that was aired on television for the Children's Rights Parliamentary. If only we had that voice now to voice out our own concerns, our issues, and even give out our own recommendations and solutions to fix these issues.
Agreed. We will be able to consolidate our ideas and opinions on contemporary issues with the recommendations and put it forward to the lawmakers.
With this continuous input and support, these measures can really be taken, and it can help support our generation and the future nations to become a better place and become beyond our expectations.
Right. We haven't even discussed on the issues of children among the persons with disability and refugees. How is the accessibility to education system? For example, my parents are deaf, and Jessie's parents are deaf too, and they never had the opportunity to participate in various activities because there was a lack of sign language interpreters.
That is right. The other day during the workshop, I was having a conversation with my two deaf friends in sign language. It was a hilarious conversation. But one of my friends, they came along and they were shocked. They saw me signing and they were asking, "You can sign?" And in my head, I was thinking, well, of course I can sign. Isn't that normal? But then when you really think about it, what is normal? See, everyone's normal is different. My normal is being spoken to and using sign language. So that's my normal. But my friend's normal here because he's predominantly with sign language, so that's his normal. So everyone's normal here is very different.
I think we can achieve a lot if our voices can be heard.
That is correct. I do agree with you, Emmanuel. I mean, as the saying goes, nothing without us is without us.
Nothing about us without us, indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Jessie and Mr. Emmanuel, for the great speech just now. I would love to convince you that we hear you and we are immensely grateful for the insights that you have provided. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the moment we have all been waiting for has arrived. It is with great honor and privilege that I invite the Honorable Datuk Sri Azzaina Othman Said, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Law and Institutional Reform, to the stage to deliver her welcoming speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera dan salam Malaysia Madani. Yang saya hormati sahabat saya yang berhormat Puan Hana Yeoh, Menteri Belia dan Sukan. Diikuti pula dengan yang berhormat M. Kula Segren, Timbalan Menteri saya di Jabatan Perdana Menteri. Sahabat saya juga yang berhormat Datuk Seri Dr. Nuraini, Timbalan Menteri Wanita Keluarga, and distinguished guests. Now I'll do it in English. Dr. Farah Nini, Children Commissioner of the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia. Dr. Punita, the Deputy Director General of the Legal Affairs Division of the Prime Minister's Department. Mr. Timo Guzman, Deputy Head of Delegation of the European Union to Malaysia. Ms. Sanja, UNICEF Malaysia Deputy Representative. Honorable friends, colleagues of the Malaysian Parliament, with the MPs and the senators, ambassadors, the other Suhakan commissioners, distinguished panelists, members of the government, NGOs, private sectors, members of the press, as most importantly, members from the other Child Commissioner's Office all over the world for attending our symposium today. It is a great pleasure for me and honor to extend a warm welcome to all of you gathered here today for the Symposium and Empowering Children's Commissioners. Thank you so much to both the young boy and girl for saying out loud what young people are thinking. And I think when I saw what they were showing from their perspective, I believe that we must use what we have today, especially when it comes to technology, for the positive activism of all the issues. And I think this is the time to use something that people see as a threat to young people. When it comes to the cyber world, we should use it positively so that children can advocate their views. Today, I would like to congratulate the organizing committee, especially in reference to SUHAKAM, to UNICEF, and to EU, for bringing us distinguished panelists in our symposium, which is the first symposium today, in reference to, in my personal view, from the legal aspect of empowering more the Children Commissioner's Office. I would like to start my speech by quoting Nelson Mandela, who says that our children are our greatest treasure. They are our future. Those who abuse them will tear the fabric of our society and weaken our nation. These words resonate deeply, reminding us as the responsibility that we bear towards our younger generation. Today, as we come together for various parts of the world representing diverse cultures, experiences, and perspectives, we are united by a common goal, which is to ensure that the rights of every children or every child are being upheld and safeguarded. The legal protection of children holds a very special place in my heart, for it is a fundamental pillar upon which the strength and integrity of any society that they are being built. In Malaysia, where children make up almost 30% of our population, their innocence, vulnerability, and limitless potential underscore the urgency of safeguarding their rights, safety, and dignity. Since August 2019, guided by the Paris Principles and the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Child, CRC, the government of Malaysia has established the Office of the Children's Commissioner administratively within the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia, which is known as SUHAKAM. Then, operating under the border in reference to the outline of the Human Rights Commission Malaysia Act in 1999, the OCC, to be very honest, lacked independent authority. However, with the emergence of the Madani government under the leadership of the 10th Prime Minister, we, the Madani government ministers, have agreed in principle last year to create a transformative shift in reference to the Office of the Children's Commissioner to be independent. I am delighted to announce that the latest legislative amendment of the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia Act 1999 unanimously passed in both the lower and the upper house of Parliament earlier this year. This amendment formally institutionalized the OCC within the National Human Rights Institution, SUHAKAM, and its mandate and the authority to directly access children's or address children's issues in Malaysia. Apart from the appointment of 3 full-time children commissioners, the amendment empowers the OCC to receive and act upon complaints and concerns from children, while also tasking it with establishing mechanism to promote children's participation in matters affecting them. This historic milestone reaffirmed Malaysia's commitment to children's rights and their meaningful engagement in shaping their future. However, our journey has just begun, and we find ourselves lagging behind compared to other countries that has offices of the Children's Commission worldwide. As we are gathered here today, we have the unique opportunity to learn from each other's experiences, share best practices, and explore innovative approaches to empower children's commissions globally. The presence of distinguished delegates from countries such as Australia, Greece, Ireland, Japan, Jamaica, Maldives, Philippines, Scotland, Sweden, and Thailand enriches our discussion today and tomorrow and reaffirms Malaysia Madani's collective commitment to the well-being of children in Malaysia. It is crucial to emphasize the vital role of children's commissioners and similar oversight bodies in advocating for children's rights globally. We have witnessed remarkable success stories worldwide where these commissioners have been powerful agents of change, bringing new legislative reforms, advancing policy initiatives, and amplifying children's voices in decision-making process. It is important to recognize that the role of children's commissions is not a confrontational one. Rather, they are intended to collaborate with and support all levels of society, including both public and private sectors and beyond. In the face of a rapid technological advancements such as AI and the associated risks, the necessity for an independent and professional body dedicated solely to safeguarding children becomes increasingly apparent. Such an entry and such an entity can transit traditional boundaries and focus slowly or solely on protecting the rights and well-being of children in an ever-evolving landscape. In addition to our distinguished delegates attending from their countries, it is imperative to acknowledge the indispensable role of allies and advocates from all levels of society, from executive, judiciary, and legislative body to international and local non-governmental organizations, from academic experts to dedicated child rights guardians. We are honored to gather all the stakeholders here today in this noble effort. As a representative of the Madani government, with the legislative framework now established by this government, it is imperative for us to ensure sufficient support for the Office of the Child Commissioner or the Children's Commissioner, guaranteeing its independence while facilitating its effective operationalization. I am optimistic that the OCC will emerge as a dedicated advocate for children, making sure that they have enhanced mandate to drive positive change and uphold the rights of every child. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, let us not forget the voices that matter the most. That is the voices of children themselves. Their perspective, their insights, their aspirations must guide our decisions and action as we work towards building a future where every child is protected, is empowered, and is given the opportunity to thrive regardless of their background and origin. Every child counts and none should be left behind. I extend my best wishes to all the delegates and attendees, and thank you so much to all the organizing committees for this great job. And of course, on behalf of the AIAC, which is the International Arbitration Center here today, I would like to apologize that the air condition is not working that well. For whatever said and done, at least the hall is free. So thank you so much to AIAC. Not that someone's going to get fired after this. But it's a joke, it's a joke. I tend to joke when it comes to, yeah, well. Anyway, we decided to do here because it's cheaper than doing with hotel. But as you know, doing with government assets, sometimes you have the aircon, sometimes you don't have the aircon. That's why I'm wearing a batik suit. I sort of preempted what will happen. So anyway, thank you so much. And tonight I'm hosting dinner to the delegates, especially to the speakers. Please attend tonight, and we'll serve you Malaysian food. But it's outdoor and it's slightly cooler, and we do not need aircon. So with that, thank you so much. But before I sit, I would like again to give a great round of applause to the two children representatives. Thank you so much. Can you please stand up? Can you please stand up? Okay, this is what I'm learning. This is the applause. Let's give him an applause. Thank you so much. So, how old are you? 15, 16? You're 17, and you? A few years' time, you can run for election for 20 PRU 16. Because in this country, we are allowing automatic votes for the 18 years old. So, well, maybe, but please be careful which political party you join and support. With that, thank you so much, and I hope God bless, and we'll have a very good symposium.
Thank you, Datuk
Wa
Sri.
hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Datuk Sri. I invite Datuk Sri to please remain on stage. As I invite Dr. Faranini Dusuki, Ms. Sanya Sranovic, and Mr. Timo Guzman up on stage to witness together the gimmick inaugurating the International Symposium on Empowerment of Children's Commission. I'm also pleased to invite YB Hanayo, Datuk Sri Noraini Ahmad, and also YB Kula up on stage to join for the inauguration of our gimmick. Now I invite Miss Jessie and Mr. Emmanuel to place their palms on the cube in the count of 3. So in the count of 3, the both of you will place your hands on the cube. All right? So I'll do the countdown. Maybe we can do the countdown together then, yeah? 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, the International Symposium officially begins. I would like to invite all our children commissioners, our ombudspersons and advocates to join our distinguished guests on stage for a photo session. We still have one more on the way. Yes. Okay, I believe everyone is on stage. Can we get a thumbs up? A thumbs up from everybody? Yes. Okay, can we show palms in front, please? Palms in front? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sri. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Sri. Thank you, distinguished guests. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, as we gather here in Malaysia, we'd like to present a welcome dance to showcase the rich cultural heritage of our nation. And with that, please welcome cultural dance performance by children from Permata Seritari National Department for Culture and Arts. Thank you, children from Permata Seritari, for the wonderful performance. Can we have another round of applause? The song just now was Sep 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 Tom Tom Tom, actually a classic, traditional song in Malaysia. And it definitely reminds me of my younger days. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the opening ceremony of the International Symposium on Empowerment of Children Commission, Strengthening Rights and Safeguarding Futures. But before we proceed with the next session, I am pleased to invite everyone to join our distinguished guests at the center of the auditorium for the photograph session. So if I can have YB Datuk Sri Azarina and YB Kula and also Dr. Farnini, as well as two of our distinguished speakers to just stand in front. And for the rest of us in the auditorium, together in the middle of the auditorium so that our photographers can take a group picture together. Stand. You want to sit? Okay. And for the rest of us, can we just gather together in the middle of the auditorium? Okay, if everybody ready? Smile. Can we show palms in front, please? Palms in front. Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We will now take a brief 15 minutes break before we resume with the next session. ladies and gentlemen, quick announcement. We will start at 11:30. So if I can invite everybody to have to go for your tea break right now, because our session for the first and the second session will continue back to back. So we'll not be having break. Yes, but if I can invite everybody to have your tea break now until 11:30. So there's 10 minutes. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can kindly have everybody to be seated. If I can have everyone to please be seated, our next session will start very, very soon. Right, ladies and gentlemen, focusing on key child rights issues in Malaysia, we will begin by hearing from our distinguished speaker, Ms. Sanya Saranovic, UNICEF Deputy Representative, who will deliver a presentation. I have the honor of inviting Ms. Sanya to commence the session.
Hello and good morning. Dr. Farah Nini, Dusuki, Children's Commissioner, Human Rights Commission in Malaysia, Mr. Timo Guzman, Deputy Head of Delegation of the European Union to Malaysia, Professor Dr. Witit Muntharborn, UN expert, children commissioners, government partners, members of diplomatic community, media, and friends. In the past 3 decades, the world has seen great improvement for children in the area of survival, education, and most significantly, the wide adoption of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, in short, CRC. The CRC is an innovative international legal document. It's a promise that the world leaders have made to children, a promise to do what it takes to protect and fulfill children's rights. This commitment requires solid legal framework, and I would like to take a moment to congratulate the government of Malaysia passing of the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia Amendment Bill 2023. This bill includes the appointment of a Chief Children Commissioner and 2 additional children commissioners. In addition, the government of Malaysia has also established the Child Developmental Department, JPKK, last year. Congratulations on this step forward, investing in child development and protection for children in Malaysia. As we celebrate how far we have come in elevating the quality of life and well-being of children, we also acknowledge that we have a long way to go. Climate change, displacement, migrating populations, and childhoods increasingly lived online present new challenges and require new approaches to safeguard the present and the future of the children. UNICEF Malaysia is committed to support the government of Malaysia in fulfilling the CRC pledge, which aligns with the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals, SDGs. In line with this commitment, UNICEF and partners carried out 2 situation analyses on women, children, and adolescents to identify key child rights issues in Malaysia. Today, I'm proud to share with you some of the key findings of these researches. Ladies and gentlemen, all around the world, the effects of climate change are become more evident. The climate crisis isn't a problem for tomorrow. It's a crisis affecting children today. This December 2021, floods in Malaysia, a catastrophic once-in-a-century event, claimed nearly 50 lives and forced 400,000 people to evacuate. This flooding resulted in an estimated 6.1 billion ringgit financial loss for the country. Similar events in the near future could cause economic losses up to 4.1% of Malaysia GDP, equivalent to approximately 15 billion US dollars by 2030. When climate disasters strike, adults may be able to respond, but children are more vulnerable and face potentially lifelong consequences. Why? Child development cannot be put on hold. Children require proper nutrition, healthcare, stimulation, play, and education for complete brain and body development. Disruptions can have a long-lasting impact on children. This is why the climate crisis is a child rights crisis. Children and youth are not oblivious to the climate crisis. In the Change for Climate report 2020 by UNDP and UNICEF, we found that 92% of young people in Malaysia believe that climate change is a crisis. In fact, Malaysian youth are already advocating for themselves and their peers. The Youth Environment Living Labs, this is a joint project of UNDP and UNICEF, is an example of young people coming together to improve climate policies for a brighter future. The government is taking a lead on the anticipated climate change bill and the National Adaptation Plan. It emphasizes the urgency and highlights the nation's priority in advancing the climate agenda. The government of Malaysia and all stakeholders in Malaysia have a UNICEF full support in investing in child-centered climate solutions and joining hands with young people that are determined to shape their future. UNICEF strives to improve child participation in all its forms. Joining forces with the local governments, UNICEF has embarked on the Child-Friendly City Initiative, CFCIs. One condition of awarding child-friendly status to a city is meaningful and inclusive child participation in which children and adolescent voices are heard in city council's decision. We strongly believe that child councils are a powerful instrument to include children's voices in decision-making, especially in local communities. This includes building climate-resilient cities. UNICEF is proud to share that PJ, Petaling Jaya, is the first city in Malaysia awarded child-friendly city status. We hope that more cities in Malaysia will soon be child-friendly cities. Presently, UNICEF is on this journey with the 5 cities in Sarawak, with more on its way, including Sabah as well. There is a strong interest to become child-friendly cities in Sabah as well. Friends and partners, access to health is the fundamental right of every child. Currently, the stunting rate among children under 5 remains high, while wasting and overweight rates are on the rise. Malnutrition most acutely affects children from poor urban households. Orang Asli children, as well as migrant, refugee, and stateless children, more needs to be done in addressing the health and nutrition of these vulnerable groups. In time, we hope to see the significant reduction in diet-related non-communicable diseases and strengthened food and nutrition security for all children. And we are heartened that the government of Malaysia is not alone in tackling the complex factors of malnutrition. A multi-sector coordinated effort, the Special Committee to combat the double burden on malnutrition among children, is in motion to meet national nutritional targets. In the long run, inclusive implementation is key in providing children with complete nutrition and improving lifelong health outcomes. Mental health. The mental health of children and adolescents in Malaysia is of equal importance to physical health. In navigating today's post-pandemic world at home, at school, and online, children and adolescents face many challenges and barriers that affect their mental health. The National Health Morbidity Survey reported a rising trend in depression among adolescents between age 13 and 17. Rates have escalated from 1 in 5 adolescents being depressed in 2017 to 1 to 4 in 2022. Additionally, suicidal thoughts among this group have increased from 10% in 2017 to 13.1% in 2022. Recent studies, including the newly released Malaysian Youth Mental Health Index 2023, show that government is committed to address mental health issues among youth in Malaysia. Adolescent health has historically been overlooked. Adolescence is a unique life stage with unique needs for youth. Therefore, we need adequate services that are attuned to these unique needs. As a society, we must end the stigma surrounding mental health. Only by removing this stigma, mental health well-being of Malaysian youth can be enhanced, and the gap in mental health healthcare services accessibility between urban and rural youth communities can be bridged. Mental health care must be accessible to all children in Malaysia. Refugee, asylum-seeking, and undocumented migrant children continue to be among the most vulnerable children in Malaysia. Their legal status and associated risk leave them highly vulnerable to violence, abuse, exploitation, trafficking, child marriage, and child labor, all of which have long-lasting mental health implications. They also have little to no access to other essential services such as education, healthcare, child protection, justice, and social protection. In Malaysia, more than 1,400 children are currently held in immigration detention, about half of them unaccompanied. Children who experience migration should not be held in detention. Exposing them to trauma that comes with detention at a tender age will have lasting mental health implications. We are heartened by the Prime Minister's statement in the second Madani Budget 2024 speech that immigration detention centers are not places for children. You can see this statement in our presentation. We are also encouraged that the government of Malaysia in 2021 pledged to implement alternatives to immigration detention for children as a member to Human Rights Council. We in UNICEF, we stand ready to support the government in establishing community-based alternatives to immigration detention for children and their families. This is a first step towards ending child immigration detention in Malaysia. Distinguished guests, it goes without saying that children need a protective environment to thrive. When children are in a nurturing environment, when they feel safe, they can focus on unlocking their full potential. Violence, abuse, and neglect of children in Malaysia has been a matter of serious concern, even more after the global pandemic. In today's world, and accelerated by the pandemic, childhoods are increasingly lived online. The Disrupting Harm report in 2022 estimated that in Malaysia, 100,000 internet-using children aged 12 to 17 experience clear instances of online child sexual exploitation and abuse every year. The call for us is to create a protective environment for children's lives online as much as offline. Their rights matters as much online as they do offline. And offline violence persists in the country. During the pandemic, the Social Welfare Department, JKM, recorded an alarming 18,000 cases of reported child abuse. This includes physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, as well as neglect, abandonment, and the absence of parents, among others. We have reason to believe that actual numbers are actually higher, as these statistics only reflects cases that have been reported. A safer environment for children can be achieved by increasing investment to support a well-trained, more qualified social workforce that is focused on providing children with the support and protection that they need. However, there is only one social worker in Malaysia for every 8,576 people in Malaysia. This is simply not enough to prevent and address violence effectively. Social workers hold the edges of this society together. They protect and prevent children and their families from experiencing violence. Social workers promote social justice, reduce the effects of discrimination, address inequalities, and contribute to the eradication of poverty. Social workers can help ensure that no one is left behind. Social workers are heroes among us. Ladies and gentlemen, the rights of children to a protective environment must be supported by laws and child-friendly policies, especially through a social work professional bill. It's imperative that we leave no stone unturned in pursuit of protective environment for all children while maintaining deep respect for the multiracial, multi-religious landscape of Malaysia. Without doubt, culture, social practices, beliefs, and religion color our worldview and how we address social issues. Dominant social, gender, and cultural norms often impede reporting of violence and abuse of children. For example, boys are found to report greater rates of violence, but they are less frequently referred to as children in need of care and protection. Changing social norms and attitudes towards these issues can create a protective environment for children. I believe that despite all these differences in culture and worldview, our main aim is one and the same: to put the best interest of children first. Distinguished guests, Malaysia has made great strides in improving access to education. In 2021, Malaysia achieved near universal enrollment rates for primary and lower secondary education at 99% and 99.8% respectively. Tremendous improvement have been attained in the enrollment rate for upper secondary education, which has more than doubled from 45% in 1980s to 97.8% in 2021. These achievements promise a bright future for this country. However, despite these amazing achievements, disparities still exist, and access for the most marginalized children remains a challenge. Although the Ministry of Education has introduced various indigenous-focused policies to improve educational outcomes of Orange Asli children since 1995, disparities continue to exist. While there appears to be some reduction in the gap between Orange Asli student and the national average according to the Malaysian Education Blueprint 2013-2025, there are still key challenges that needs to be addressed. Faced with socioeconomic, geographic, language, and cultural barriers, many Orange Asli children perform poorly and eventually drop out of the school. These significant challenges have resulted in persistently higher Orange Asli student dropout rates from the national average. Greater efforts, including systematic evaluation of existing programs and incorporation of Orange Asli values and culture into the curriculum, are needed. Similar to indigenous groups, access to education for undocumented children and refugee children must be addressed. Although there are alternative education opportunities provided by non-governmental sector and other developmental partners, this is simply not enough and not sufficient. There are significant limitations to accessing quality education. In fact, the quality of education varies widely between learning centers, and this is highly costly. An inclusive education policy must also provide for these invisible groups of children mentioned. Through inclusive education policies, we hope to see significantly reduced dropout rates and improved access to education for all children in Malaysia. No child should be left behind. It is also high time we review inclusive education for children with disabilities. To date, Ministry of Education has concurrent education systems which are the mainstream, special, integrated and inclusive education systems. Evidence shows that more holistic and cost-effective is to run just one inclusive education system that is designed with flexibility to meet the needs of all children. Furthermore, segregating children with disabilities through multiple special educational systems excludes them from their peers and society. Inclusive education for children with disabilities must be centered on removing all barriers to full and effective participation in society on an equal basis to children without disabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, in this age of information technology, it's imperative to equip children with skills in this domain. In 2023, the government of Malaysia launched the National Digital Education Policy, focusing on importance of digital education integration to empower students in several key aspects of education. The Digital Education Learning Initiative, Malaysia, DELIMA 2.0, is launched in 2022, and this is a part of country approach of blending face-to-face and online learning support for children to acquire future skills. By the end of 2022, as many as 85% have accessed the Digital Educational Learning Initiative, the DELIMA platform for online learning. However, education policies must ensure that all children are covered in the implementation of these policies. Therefore, as the world progresses, we must revisit and re-evaluate the efficacy of education policies at implementation level and identify barriers to education access for all children. Inclusive access to education is the right of every child, and the CRC pledge compels us to do what it takes to provide them the education they deserve. The time is to act now. Friends, partners, these key issues and challenges are not big, not to be overcome. Identifying them is the first of many steps in effectively addressing them. As you may know, Malaysia is due to report to the CRC Committee on the progress of implementation to the CRC. At the same time, government is working on development of the 13 Malaysia Plan. I believe that findings from one will serve to the other and provide clarity on the way forward. UNICEF walks with the government. We are together on this journey to realize every right for every child in Malaysia. I'm sure many of you are wondering, well, what is next? What we can do all together at this juncture to swiftly improve the issues that I mentioned in the slides. Here are some of UNICEF recommendations for immediate next steps. First, reservations to the CRC, especially Article 2, 7, 14, 28.1 and 28.1a and 37 to the CRC must be removed to strengthen implementation of children's rights in Malaysia. Children are our future, but only if their rights are recognized today and realized today. Therefore, approaches to policies, frameworks, and other efforts must reflect children's voices and meaningful participations, as they are indeed the largest stakeholders. I'm very pleased, and I'm sure you are pleased to see youth participation today at the opening. During the weekend, they work hard, and I heard more than 7 hours, and these are the 3 elements that they are really concerned. It's access to health for all children, inappropriate use of the playground and non-maintenance of the playground, bullying in the school, and maltreatment of the school staff in the school environment. So these are the 3 main things that kids of today are urging all of us to act. Inclusivity must be a key element in the implementation of all child-related policies. Our pledge to children must go beyond merely addressing the issue. We must ensure that no child is left behind. I'm closing with a golden quote that you can see on the slide. You cannot see, but I will try it in Malay. I will try to say, Bersama tago barcerie robo. United efforts are truly key in bringing about the change that we need in improving the rights of children in Malaysia and around the world. UNICEF stands alongside with you, with all of you, as a partner and as a friend in building a world where children thrive. Thank you, terima kasih.
Thank you, Ms. Sanya. Thank you, Ms. Sanya, for your speech just now. Next, to continue with our next session, I'd like to invite Ms. Batrisha Raihana binti Sharil and Ms. Emeline Ira binti Khairul Hisham for a moderated session facilitated by Professor Bruce Adamson. Please welcome.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm Bruce. It's a huge pleasure to be here in Malaysia with all of you. Thank you so much to the Prime Minister's Department, to Sukan, to the Children's Commissioner, to UNICEF, and to the European Union for bringing us all together for this amazing symposium. And the key to this, as we've just heard, is the incredible work that the children and young people have been doing to bring their voices to you, key stakeholders. And this is important because not just that children have the right to express their views, but because adults then need to take that and take action. And so I think I'm going to get some of you involved, or in fact all of you involved in this process. And so we're going to hand out some paper now. I think we've got colleagues at the back. We're going to hand you all a piece of paper. So you'll be receiving a piece of paper. And what I want you to do is to write down on that piece of paper, in big writing, a commitment that you will make to the children. So it's a commitment that you will make when you leave here today to take forward the issues that the children have been raising. And so I want you to write in big letters that commitment that you will make to children on that piece of paper. And we'll come back to that after we've had a bit of a conversation. The other thing is that as children's commissioners, we have a specific obligation to work directly with children and young people. That's one of the things that the committee and Mikiko Otani, who gave the opening presentation, talked about the second general comment. One of the things that makes children's commissioners different from human rights commissions and other bodies is that we have a specific requirement to involve children in every part of our work. And it's the best job in the world, and this is the best part of the job, is working directly with children and young people like you. Do you want to start by introducing yourselves, or shall we jump into questions? Right, go.
Hi everyone, my name is Batrisha. Hello everybody, my name is Emmeline. Okay.
Fantastic. And so you're just two of the young people. You put yourself forward after the incredible work that was done yesterday, over 7 hours. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, the results of some of the work that the children and young people did is really powerful. There's really key messages here. But if I was to ask you a question, so if you were in charge of Malaysia and you could do anything at all, so there's no budget limits, you've got all of the power that all of these people have, what's the first thing that you would do to make things better for children?
Well, my honest idea was to shopping, but no. I think I want to do is education. I know this is like a very cliche answers, but I think I want it to be more deep. I do not want education just for the kids or the children in the city, but more to the rural areas, more for the lower income family. And I'm not talking about basic education, but I want it to be deep, specific education that they truly want to learn. I do not want them to just learn basic mathematics, but I want them to learn advanced mathematics so that they can go to universities. I don't want them to repeat the cycle of their family. I want them to get out. I want them to reach their highest potential. I do not want a better education. I want a better quality education for all of us, not just for the city kids, but for everyone here.
That's incredible. And I think in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 29 talks about the purpose of education, and you've captured that so well, that it's about developing children to their fullest potential. And that was such an incredible articulation of that. That's brilliant. Emmeline.
For me, personally, in my opinion, I feel like in Malaysia, there are some parts of Malaysia that where children, and specifically immigrants, they do not have access to proper health care. And like, let's say immunization, like vaccination, like we all need that. We don't know like the possibilities of like how far the generations can continue if we don't like give them these opportunities to completely like develop their health care. And like let's say if these children do not have like do not get these vaccinations, in the end our children in our generation are also affected, as these diseases that we get vaccinated are also contagious. So we really need to point out this big aspect and this big problem, as like there are actually many little parts of Malaysia that are not very exposed to these healthcare, and not many families are also aware that this immunization and vaccinations are very important. Thank you.
Fantastic. And again, I think that really strongly captures the right to health. And so it's the right to the highest attainable standard of health. And there's an obligation on the state to use all available resources to deliver that. So I think these are two really important and powerful points. And so I think we should just put you in charge now, and then we can deliver on this. But on the forms here, there's been lots of information about the discussions yesterday about some of the things that are going well and some of the things that are going not so well. What's one thing that you think's going really well in your community or at a national level that you think we should do more of?
Oh, I love this question. For me, it just happened recently in my neighborhood community. It was fasting month. Fasting month is like a religious month where we do not eat a whole morning. We will eat at 7 p.m. So what my religious place did is nothing fancy, no fancy people coming, but we did food eating. So what we did is that we invite anyone who wants to eat, come. Regardless of your age, gender, or whatever your background, you do not have to even be in that neighborhood community. But the goal is to make sure that everyone is being fed. Everyone has a food security during that time. We do not have a fancy budget at all. We do not get any money. But what we did was that we tried to do potluck. Every day, everyone brings something. And I've seen a lot of feedbacks from people that they said they never eat full meal every day, but they managed to have some food. So I think that even we do not have any budgets or whatever, like fancy paperwork, but it done very nicely. It's just one thing that our children and our parents did, that's something that touched me. Yeah, it was really nice.
That's amazing, and the food here is incredible. So, but that connection to community and building up, I think, is a really wonderful thing that we should do more of. So that's a fantastic example.
For me, yeah, one thing that I think we should do more of is something like this in general. Like talking and asking children for their own opinion in big and relative things. Like this in general is already very much important. And like I'm very glad that I'm actually able to participate and talk to you and express myself here.
Fantastic. That's so powerful. And I think in the convention, it talks about children having the right to express your view on all matters that affect you, which is everything. But there's an obligation on adults then to do something with that. It's not your job to fix all of the problems, but you've got to be able to be part of the solution. So just reminding you, everyone should have a piece of paper. Has everyone got a piece of paper? Yeah. And has everyone managed to write something down yet? If you haven't, then please get writing. Write down your commitment, because we'll be coming back to that shortly. So my next question is, so we've heard about the really good stuff. What's maybe not going so well? So what's something that maybe isn't working so well that maybe we should really focus on trying to fix?
I think that in Malaysia, the aspects of mental health are actually kind of like not too pressed on. Like we are not too worried about that. And this is based on my experience in school. Like everybody there has this kind of mindset that, oh, even if I have this bad feeling, I can't really tell them to my parents because I'll get the same answers from the teachers. Like, oh, I just need to like hold up with it. I need to put up with it. And I think that that's a very bad mindset. And I feel like a lot of children nowadays have this kind of mindset. I think that's really bad because it really does affect their mental health. And I think that Malaysia really needs to be aware that like adults have to be more open with their children, realize that maybe what their child is going through isn't something that they can really cope with.
Fantastic. I think that's true around the world, but it came through really strongly in the UNICEF study that we heard about. And so I think that's a really powerful message for all of the adults in the room.
Yeah, I do agree with her. As for me, Malaysian's syllabus was quite tough, but it's still manageable. So it was quite playing with our mental health because we learned a lot. We had to go curriculum, all of it. We can cope with it, but I think we just need some support in some way from our counselors, from our teachers. And mental health can really be harmful. There's some suicide stories that I've heard because of mental health stories. We'll get into that later. From what I've heard from my friend, that according to her, like this friend of hers experienced cyberbullying, and what that led to was, what happened was actually during her school years, like her classmates made like online anonymous accounts, and they directly messaged her like a lot of hate, a lot of well, just generally negative things, and that really led to her mental health being affected, and it led to her suicide.
It's absolutely heartbreaking, and we need to make sure that stops and we provide that support. That leads me to a really interesting question, I think, about, we're talking about things like cyberbullying, and what's different now, do you think, growing up in Malaysia as a child, as a young person, from perhaps someone my age or in the audience? Most of us obviously a little bit older, some of us a lot older. What's different about being a child or a young person now to maybe when we grew up? Because the people making the decisions don't have that same connection to what's going on. So what's different about being a child or young person now?
I think I want to let my friends answer this. I think all of us has the same answers. Kids, what's difference from their age, from the adults' age, compared to our age? Can I hear some voice? See, it's easy. It's a social media. I think from the people in front of me age, you guys do not grow up with Facebook. Do you guys grow up with Facebook? Some of them grew up with Facebook, some of them did. But our generation, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter, everything, you name it. So when we have all of these access, sometimes we do not know the policy of it. Sometimes we do nasty comments because we are still a kids. Our frontal lobe are not developed yet. And I heard about the cyberbullied stories. And I have to be honest, before this, I thought that cyberbullying is like very small problems. I thought that, oh, you can just log off your phone and it's done. Nothing, because no one is hitting you. It's just a word. Why are you being so feeling of it? But when I've experienced it by myself, just like a small one, I've seen, oh, it's not just about you logging off your phone. It's about a long terms. You still deep in down, you know the words that they send to you. And I think the way that the other generation, they don't understand about the harm of social media compared to us. Because we grew up in social media. I've heard one of my friends had social media even when he was 8 years old. Can you imagine someone that young to be exposed to so many nasty comments? Yeah, that's for me.
Okay, in my opinion, I feel like the general awareness of like children's rights compared to our generation and the generation back then is kind of a very different level now. Since we have, yes, social media, I feel like children are more aware now compared to back then that, oh, I have my rights, I can stand, this is where I'm supposed to stop, which is really good compared to back then where they would not really know how to like stand up for themselves, how they would be able to like maybe talk back to their teachers a little bit whenever they feel like too offended. And yeah, that is like a very big and good aspect that I feel like we should go more on.
Fantastic. So there's some positives there, there's some negatives. Some of us, I grew up most of my childhood before the convention was even ratified, and certainly I finished university before the internet was really widely in use, and so very different in terms of both knowledge of rights and in terms of even the internet and social media. And so that's why your leadership's so important as human rights defenders. And the Committee on the Rights of the Child did a general comment, a big statement on children in the digital world, and children's voices were so powerful because you understand social media in a way that we don't. So that's hugely exciting. I know that both of you won the election to come and sit on stage, but there are other children in the room. If there's any other children that want to come and make a comment, just put your hand up and we can get a microphone to you. But I know we're coming towards the end of our time. But if there's any other children who want to say anything, we'll make sure that we hear your voices. So please don't be silent if you're sitting wanting something to say. And the adults in the room, you've all got your pieces of paper, and so on that piece of paper you should have written a commitment to children to make things better. I also want you to put your name against that commitment now. So write down your name and maybe where you're from next to that commitment so that we know that it's your commitment. So if you could all do that, please. And now I'm going to ask another question, what should be on their pieces of paper? What's your big ask of the adults in the room? What commitment should they be making to you when they go away to reflect all of this?
truth to be said, I want to say stop fake tokenism. I've seen it before where they meet children. They say, oh, what's your problems? Okay, we'll help you, no worries. They take a few fancy pictures and it's done. Nothing after that. I've seen it coming over and over again. They said that the syllabus will change. They said they will take care more of our mental health. But nothing happens. I think that we should, I understand that it's also hard for them to completely change the policy, but we should be reality. You should just tell us what is in the table, what can you provide for us. At least we have one understanding with all of us. The kids here, we raised this issue because it was really truly matters to us. That's why we want you to help. And if you cannot do it, it's fine. You just should tell us what it is. And yeah, for me, just stop fake tokenism. Yeah.
For me, everybody in this room should know, since we talked about how our generation gap has led to the difference between our knowledge and rights, I feel like every adult should be aware by now. Every adult should be more open to their children, more open to any child really, about how rights are really important, how we should be more flexible with some situations in our children, how we should not just restrict them from whatever they think they feel is right. And I feel like we should really open up more passion, open up for more opportunities for all children around the world, and so they could really grow to their full potential.
May I add on? Yeah, I think that one thing that if you really want to know, you should just go to any children in this room and ask them, okay, you use the Gen Z terms, spill the tea. Can you spill one tea about your school? And I'll trust you. I believe you will get so shocked about the stories that they will tell. All of the, you will have that situations, that moment when you heard about our stories. It's very different. It's much more, how I say, it was eye-opening. If you really want to know what our gossip's about, yeah, just go to one of children and ask them, can you spill tea about your school? And you see what they tell you.
That's fantastic. Are there any of the other children who are in the room that want to say anything at the moment? I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't really see. But is there anyone that wants to speak? No. Okay, so I've got one kind of last question. I realize it's really hot. Does it ever snow in Kuala Lumpur?
You go to ICT, they have a fake snow.
Yeah.
That's the closest you can go.
Okay, well, because then it snows a lot in Scotland, and so we're going to do a little exercise and try and make some snow in the room. And so I see everyone's got fans. So the piece of paper that you've got with your commitment on it, what I want you to do is crush that into a ball. So crush that into a snowball for me. Just like that. I'm seeing people doing it. So hold those up. And then this, so into a ball, lovely. And so this is your commitment. You're not giving it away, but you're sharing it because we're all working together. And so I want you to share your commitment. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to get you to stand up if you're able to. And when I say go, I want you to throw your snowball across the room and then try and catch someone else's and throw it again. And we'll do it for about 30 seconds and see how many snowballs you can throw and catch, and we'll mix them up. So if you're able to stand up, please do. So if you're able to stand up, don't start yet. So if you're able to stand, please. And if you've got your snowball, ready, set, go. And so keep throwing them. We want to generate some nice, cool air. Okay, stop, and now try and find a snowball. So try and find one. If you've got two, maybe give it to a friend. I want you to all take a snowball and open it up. So take a piece of paper, open that up now, and see what commitment someone else has made. And I want you, over the next couple of days, try and find that person that made that commitment and have a conversation with them. So during the tea breaks or the lunch, find the person whose name's on that snowball and talk to them about the commitment that they've made to the children and young people. Brilliant. Brilliant. Was there any final words that you wanted to say before we finish? Well, then I'd like everyone to join me in thanking the amazing young people, Emmeline and Patricia, and all of the other young people that have been involved, because they're hugely impressive human rights defenders.
Thank you, thank you, Professor Bruce Adamson. We also have Ms. Patricia Rehana and also Ms. Emmeline Ira just now for a very, very impactful discussion. I'd like to say that I grew up with Facebook. I also have Twitter and I also have TikTok, so we're probably of the same age. Maybe not. But thank you very much, Professor Bruce Adamson. We'll continue with the next session. Thank you again, Professor Bruce Adamson and the two ladies on stage. So as we prepare for the next session, we'll reconvene at around 12:20. All right? 12:20. All right, apologies, my apologies. This next session will delve into the overview of the role of independent institutions in relation to children's rights. And it will be moderated by Ms. Tehmina Kashuji. I hope I got this right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Tehmina.
Hello and a very good morning, everyone. Good afternoon indeed, as we're slightly delayed. Thank you very much, Miss MC, for that quick introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you will make good use of the hand fans as we settle in for a little bit of a while. So basically, this entire session aims to set the stage for everything which all of you will be discussing and connecting over the next 2 days. First and foremost, allow me to introduce our first speaker, who will help frame Malaysia's narrative and commitment towards children's rights by presenting on the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia Amendment Act 2024. But right before she comes on stage, I would now like to request for a video montage of the chronology of establishing of the Office of the Children's Commission in Malaysia to be played. I will step aside briefly so that at least the screen behind me is not interrupted. Let's go with the video. All right, so of course we've had a very brief introduction. Allow me to give you a quick bio of Dr. Farhanini Dasuki, Children's Commissioner with Suhakam. She is a senior lecturer at the University of Malaya's Faculty of Law, and of course appointed as Suhakam's Children Commissioner on March the 8th, 2023. She brings over 30 years of experience in human rights and child law. She earned her doctorate from Cardiff University, UK in 2002, focusing on social legal issues in protecting children from abuse and neglect. Dr. Farhanini's research areas include criminal justice legislation, child law, adolescent reproductive health, and the enforcement of children's rights in Malaysia. Her mission as the Children's Commissioner is to safeguard, promote, and respect children's rights in Malaysia, regardless of their status. May I invite Dr. Farhanini to take the stage to deliver her presentation.
Thank you, Tahmina, for the kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. This will be quick because I hear what I'm going to be saying by at least two people this morning, two very important people. So this is just to give a snapshot on the statutory recognition of the Office of the Children's Commissioner within the Suhakam Suhakam Act 1999. But before that, forgive me for being flippant on this, I want to thank everyone for being here. Our respected guest speakers and moderators who within a short span of 1 month accepted our invitation. You know, they agreed immediately upon us inviting them. And I want to thank, of course, our partners, Bayu, UNICEF, EU, and of course, the organizing committee who have been relentless, and I literally mean relentless, in working very, very hard in making today and tomorrow a reality, and yesterday as well. So moving on now. Hang on. So now just to give a background, the Human Rights Act was passed in 1999, 25 years ago. And it has a provision that provide commissioners of human rights can be appointed up to 20 commissioners. So when in 2019, when the government then wanted to have an Office of Children's Commissioner with the cabinet paper, they used the source of authority from the Suhakam Act to appoint the first Children's Commissioner. And last year, YB Azalina, as you have heard what she said this morning, pushed for an independent Children's Commission, which did not quite get through in a way that it was envisaged, but to institutionalize and to give statutory recognition to the Office of the Children's Commissioner, it is currently parked under the Suhakam Act 1999, and with significant amendments to both the composition of the OCC and also the powers of the OCC and the functions. So I'm not going to be reading the Act to you, but suffice to say there is a whole new section of Section 8A which establishes the position of the Chief Children's Commissioner and appointment of 2 other commissioners who will be placed, one in Sabah and one in Sarawak. At the moment, there is a Suhakam office in Sabah and also a Suhakam office in Sarawak and one in Kuala Lumpur, with a total capacity, if I'm not mistaken, 97 staff altogether. However, the problems or the issues in Sabah and Sarawak are quite different from that in Peninsular Malaysia, hence the need to have commissioners fully stationed there on a full-time basis. And a very important amendment to this act is that the children commissioners will all be full-time, because at the moment all commissioners, before the amendment, all commissioners are all appointed on part-time basis. It means that we keep our university jobs, we keep our legal firm or whatever, but we do our commission works over and above, fulfilling our full-time jobs. But of course, being the Children's Commissioner, I'm sure you'll agree with me, it is more than just full-time. And because of that, to ensure the appointment of the 3 children commissioners will be among Malaysians with relevant expertise on children, they will receive compatible remuneration and allowances and will be employed on full-time basis. And the term is for a time of 3 years and may be reappointed, but there will be a maximum period of 6 years altogether. So I understand that in Australia it's 5 years with a possibility of extension, but in Malaysia it's 3 plus 3. So I technically have 1 year and 7 months left. Now, these are the general functions of the office. Again, I'm not going to be reading to you. I mean, there are 4 general functions which all commissioners have. That is to advise the government on compliance to human rights standards, to also examine the status of our ratification and reservations to the conventions that we have signed and the potential of signing other international treaties. And thirdly is also to promote human rights, particularly for my office is of course the promotion of human rights and education on it. And finally, of course, to inquire into complaints. And I think this is one of the most fulfilling part, apart from being with children, of course, it is to really inquire into complaints, especially when they come directly from children themselves. So the guiding instruments or principles for us will be the Federal Constitution, definitely, and the other relevant international instruments, and of course, systemic issues affecting children and in Malaysia, but of course, will be context-oriented. A newly added function will be the participation of children. This was not in the Suhakam Act before, but participation of children is an important component, and the Office of the Children's Commissioner wants to make this meaningful. It is not enough to just have a Children Representative Council, which we now already have. At national level, we have the Children Representative Council, and in PJ, we heard Sanya said that, you know, it is a fully established student council. But what's more important, and this would be my personal dream, is to really have children representative in all committees deciding on matters affecting children at the ministerial and agency levels. And of course, this is not an impossible dream. We do have a few committees in Ministry of Health, for example, and the National Council does have child representatives, but we want to make it more inclusive. You know, we heard the minister, she said, you know, how do we decide on children issues when we do not include children effectively within the discussions? The other newly added function, oh, my slide is not working now. Can the organizer move my slide, please? Yes, and this will be my last slide, I think. Yes, the right to communication. This was also not in the former Suhakam Act, but now, you know, there is a specific provision which allows children to express, you know, their want to communicate with the Commission. And when they do that, facilities must be provided for them to do it freely and also to do it in privacy. And we hope that to do this, we are assisting the government by drafting the first draft of the SOPs, the Standard Operating Procedures, because the law says as long as we comply to the SOPs developed by the agencies, they cannot refuse entrance into these institutions or shelters or whatever. So the positions, the places have been expanded to accommodate the OCC. Previously, it was just the justice centers, but because children are everywhere, and that is why the provision of the law has been expanded. So with that, I hope I have provided an overview of where we stand at the moment. Of course, in practice, it's still just me and 4 other officers, but hopefully soon, sooner and not later, we will be having the additional 2 commissioners and also additional staff to support the OCC. Thank you very much, everyone. Again, apologies for the heat and enjoy the next 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Faranini. That was an excellent oversight of everything which is happening Malaysia-wise. And of course, we are hopeful that the already tabled citizenship law in Malaysia that recently caused a little bit of controversy will see specific further amendments before it is passed. This, of course, is in order to guarantee full rights for stateless children, as well as retroactive citizenship for all existing overseas-born children, OBCs of Malaysian mothers. Now, just on a slightly personal note, but also completely connected to everything that we're speaking on this conference, I actually happen to be the adult overseas-born child of a Malaysian mother. Henceforth, I am still not a citizen, despite being a Malaysian journalist who regularly represents Malaysia on all issues, politics, current affairs, and etc. Well, that's said and done. Let's move on speedily to the panel session itself. And before we move forward, of course, I would be remiss not to invite my esteemed panelists to join me on stage, beginning with Professor Vitit Muntaborn, Professor Emeritus of Law at Chulalongkorn University and UN Special Rapporteur on Cambodia. We're also joined by Commissioner Beda Angela Pres, Commission on Human Rights with Philippines. Ms. Neomat Shafiq, Children's Ombudsperson with Maldives. Hi. Yes. Ms. Diane Gordon Harrison, Children's Advocate with Jamaica. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Elizabeth Dallin, former Ombudsperson for Children, Sweden. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as our esteemed panelists are settling in, we intend to, as the young ladies in the former session were saying, spill the tea when it comes to setting the stage and having an overview from a diverse array of really, truly different countries. But of course, we have similar challenges when it comes to all the issues that we deeply care about regarding children. So I'm actually going to begin with a brief introduction of each panelist and getting their introductory statements on a very important issue. Professor Vitit first. Now, Prof. Muntaborn is currently a Professor Emeritus of Law at the Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok, having taught international law, human rights, law of regional organizations, migration and refugee law, child rights, international humanitarian law, and European Union law. He is also a designated United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situations of human rights in Cambodia, having served in various capacities as former UN Special Rapporteur on the sale of children, former UN Special Rapporteur on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, former UN Independent Expert on Protection Against Violence and Discrimination based on Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity, and former Chairperson of the UN-appointed Commission of Inquiry on the Ivory Coast. He's also the recipient of a number of awards, including the 2004 UNESCO Human Rights Education Prize. Now, Prof. Vitit, I would love to begin with you sharing with us your introductory statement about the concept of child-friendliness in relation to the work of independent institutions and the importance of course, inclusive approaches.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, particularly the children. Salamat. I'm from Bangkok, and basically, I'm a volunteer. I started as a youth volunteer, and I still volunteer. So that's my link really with the conference today. And thank you so much for inviting me down again. Basically, a national institution, a mechanism, a commission, an ombudsperson is a means to an end. It is never an end in itself, meaning that whatever we set up must work towards a greater end. And the greater end here is protection of children's rights, as well as promoting their rights. So I hope, particularly with the young people here, younger, older, chronologically developing, I hope that we'll work on this means towards a greater end together, well, by learning. The existence of national institutions globally, to date, including national human rights commissions here, ombudspersons, ombudsmen, ombudswomen, it's about 120 mechanisms worldwide. And at last count, specific children's commissioners and ombudspersons would amount to about 40 worldwide. So now we have a new mechanism as part of this family of mechanisms which should work towards a greater end. And there are standards as to how these mechanisms, these institutions should be set up, as well as what they should do in terms of work. And it's a very simple answer, particularly to the young people here. They have to prove that they are going to promote child rights, human rights, and they have to prove that they protect child rights, human rights, on the basis of non-discrimination, the best interest of the child, the right to life of children plus, as well as respect for the views of the child. So it is very important, first of all, to understand that we're talking about children anywhere, everywhere. Not just Thai children or Malaysian children, but all children on Malaysian soil, with or without nationality. That is a very, very important entry point. And if we agree on that, we can work well together as a means to an end. Now, short, succinct summary of what they should do, really, and how they should be formed, these human rights commissions, these children's commissions, and so on. We have various standards emerging from Paris in the early 1990s called the Paris Principles concerning national human rights institutions. When you set up Suhakam or a commissioner claiming to be independent, then you must prove, number one, that you are independent. The institution must be independent at least from the executive branch. At least from the executive branch, very important. So, the consequence of that is that Suhakam, or the commissioner, children's commissioner, should be established on the basis of a law to ensure your independence. A statute, legislation in parliament, not executive decree coming from the Prime Minister. Why do I say that? Because the Indonesian Commission was established by executive decree. And it had to adjust itself later to have a law on it, statutory law, guaranteeing the independence. Now that's very important. Myanmar Commission as well, even though Myanmar is in difficulties. Thai Commission was established by law, statute. Philippine Commission was established, you'll hear from him, my friend here, by a constitution directly, big law. So that's very important. And the person or the group to be the commissioner should be selected not by the Prime Minister, but by a plural group, a committee consisting of different stakeholders, non-governmental organizations, maybe some government people, and ultimately over here, children in the selection committee to select a commissioner. And of course, I send my warmest congratulations to our dear commissioner here, with a big clap for her for the next stage. So I'm introducing maybe little things to adjust ultimately. And thirdly, in terms of independence, you must be able to act accessibly everywhere. Better to have full time than part-time, because otherwise you can't commit to being totally, fully independent. Accessibility in terms of time as well as commitment, very important. The first criterion, therefore, is prove to us that you are independent from the executive branch. Secondly, prove to us that you are pluralistic. If it's a commission, it should draw from different ethnic groups, different religions, different genders. But for the commissioner, perhaps one, but you're going to have 2 deputies. So please think about that in terms of pluralism, because Suhakam as a big group, I also think tries to be pluralistic with stepping stones. And thirdly, effective in work, meaning you have to have some budget, not from the Prime Minister, but from Parliament ultimately. And if you don't have it from Parliament yet, that's your next step. You can't go through the executive branch in terms of money, and you need some in terms of resources. But it's not just money. Resources are much more. It's goodwill, it's pro bono work, it's helpers too, including the input of the children, very importantly. So effectiveness calls for resources as well as operations. You need a good secretariat. And there's always a big debate as to whether the secretariat here should be government officials or independent. It's still a question for many commissions, and it'll be your question too. And ultimately, in terms of effectiveness, child-responsive, child-friendly access, gender-responsive, gender-friendly too. So I'm happy to hear that you're going to have outreach. One commissioner or sub-commissioner for Sarawak, one commissioner, sub-commissioner for Sabah. Good. And Suakam also has that, as well as the other commissions sitting here. So those are the three criteria. But ultimately, the proof of the Malaysian pudding is in the eating. And you have great pudding here. So let's prove, with independence, with pluralism, with effectiveness, that we can enjoy the food deliciously together. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that, Vitit. A wonderful way to start off. And now, in the interest of time, of course, I'm going to pose the same question to each one of our esteemed panelists, beginning with Commissioner Beda Angela Press, who's from the Commission on Human Rights of Philippines. Of course, posing the question to you about the concept of child-friendliness when it comes to the work of independent institutions and the importance of inclusive approaches in your experience with what you have done in the Philippines.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for the opportunity of being invited and speak before this great audience. I totally agree with the professor here that the creation of a commission, or whatever you may call it, is really a means to an end. We are all here because of one thing. We want to protect our children. We want to protect the future generation. The Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines is composed of 4 commissioners and a chairperson. At present, we have we only have 3 commissioners and a chairperson. So the manner of selection as to what would be the role of each commissioner would be a matter of their choice, or rather, what would be their advocacy. In my case, I chose to advocate for the rights of children. You know why? Because children are the most vulnerable sector in our society. We have to take good care of them from the very start. Otherwise, you know, if ever these children will not be guided properly, who knows what would happen to them. Part of the work of the Commission on Human Rights, through, of course, our Child Rights Center, is to advocate policies to the government. The Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines is a watchdog of the bureaucracy. We consider ourselves as bridges, as a bridge between the children, the CSOs, and the NGOs to the government. So everything that concerns children, we talk to them because we wanted to involve children in all aspects that concerns them. We do constant dialogues with them, and just before we came over to Malaysia, we commemorated the International Day for Children in Street Situations. We have invited children who are in the streets to come over to our place. We had a dialogue. We have invited the Department of Social Welfare and Development, the Interior and Local Government, because these are the agencies who could directly protect the children. The role of the Commission on Human Rights is merely a bridge. We are there to remind this government agency that they should perform their function. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Beda, for that. Moving on to Ms. Newmat Shafiq, of course, from Children's Ombudsperson of Maldives. Ms. Shafiq, if you would mind perhaps telling us a little bit more about your opinion about the concept of child-friendliness when it comes to the role of independent institutions and how inclusiveness has been working for Maldives insofar.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I would like to thank Zohakan, Ombudsperson, Children's Ombudsperson, as well as UNICEF for supporting us being here. I think our role as Children's Ombudsperson is quite independent under Child Protection Act, which might be different from coming from Human Rights Commission directly. So initially when the law came into being, we were supposed to be placed within the Human Rights Commission, but during the debate at the Parliament, it was decided that it should be an independent body rather than placed within the Human Rights Commission. So we have four main roles responsibilities we have to adhere to, that is monitor and enforce all state institutions to ensure that they adhere to the Child Rights Act, as well as monitor and enforce UNCRC, which broadens our role to include all the best practices and protocols of UNCRC, and as well as monitor and evaluate and performance of state institutions and employees, and also investigate the issues that come to us as complaints. So when we look at the child participation as well as how we try to make the work of Children's Ombudsperson child-friendly, we have, in all our forums and as well as child audits, we have included children participation as one co-actor even during the audits we do in the institutions. Like, for example, the schools. When we did the National Reintegration Center, the children were interviewed to be as part of the agency and contributing to the work we are doing. We also have all the 2 conferences we have had, or symposiums had been led by children. We have just been provider in providing a platform for them to work with. We also have a toll-free number that's been established where children can call us anytime, from anywhere in the country, so they can be reached and can discuss whatever they want without any charges to them. And we have also started, because our school system is such that almost all communities have state schools, where the schools are the key functioning for activities for children. So we have started working with schools in providing a platform, what we call RAU Forum, where they give their opinions and their views. And these RAU forums we have totally reached in the last 3 years, I think 2 years, we have reached over 800. And every school we have reached so far has their own action plan to work with. So those are the platforms we have created for child participation and child friendliness within the work we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ms. Shafiq. Also very interesting to hear that Maldives is ensuring children's voices are at the forefront of the work you do. Moving over to Diane. Now, Diane, would you mind giving us an overview of Jamaica's views when it comes to, of course, child friendliness and how it connects to the work of your independent institution, and at the same time being very, very inclusive and cognizant of challenges?
Thank you for the question. And I think I want to join my colleagues just in expressing thanks to the gracious hosts and organizers for facilitating the discussion and for the inclusion, certainly, of Jamaica's voice. Now, if I'm going to be very centered on the issue of child friendliness, why not child friendliness? After all, if we are focused on promoting children's rights, enhancing their best interests, and in fact looking at the whole system and architecture of child safeguarding, it has to be centered around child-friendly approaches. Now, the Office of the Children's Advocate, which I have the privilege of leading at this time, is a commission of the Jamaican Parliament that has been established by statute to safeguard and protect the rights of children and to promote their best interests. Now, we take that very seriously and very literally. So, for example, when we talk about child friendliness, we're looking at having very practical translation, if you will, of legal documents, so that the language that is used is very easily understood by or under 18 population. And we're also looking at exploiting the various areas where children are. So that is very active use of social media. So we have bite-sized messages, for example, that we present using cartoons and using posts on our various social media pages. So we're on TikTok, we are on Instagram, we are on Facebook, and we have our own YouTube channel so that we're engaging with our population. And perhaps very importantly as well, is that we involve very centrally the voices of children through the Children's Advocates Children's Advisory Panel. In terms of being inclusive, we believe in getting our advice from children. If we are going to be effective, how do you want us to present the material, and how do you want us to include your voice and your views? For instance, during COVID, we created a 24-hour child and teen helpline. And what we did was, right after doing the feasibility study, we canvassed the views of children through various focus groups right across the island. So they helped us to decide what the logo should look like, what colors would be appealing to children so that they would engage, and very importantly, what the helpline should look like if they're actually going to use it. And so out of that consultation, we have a Safe Spot, which is the name of the child and teen helpline in Jamaica, that children can reach us via a toll-free number that's free from any service provider they have. We also have Snapchat and Instagram, and so they get counseling support through direct messages. We have a bot on our website, and we also have a BIP channel, which is a local channel on one of the service providers' platforms. And so for us, inclusivity means including the voice and catering to bespoke cohorts of children to ensure that we are resonating with them and they find us impactful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Diane, for sharing that. And that brings in mind that perhaps Malaysia ought to go back to our nationally available child helpline, which of course is not currently functional, but was once upon a time. Thanks very much for that, Diane. Moving over to Ms. Elizabeth Dallin, former Ombudsperson for Children of Sweden, whose term just ended on March the 1st, 2024. But of course, you have plenty to share with us. Elizabeth, could you tell us more about centering children when it comes to child friendliness and the work of independent institutions from a Swedish perspective?
Thank you very much. And I think that issue is so important for anybody working with children. And I would like to thank the children who said during the opening ceremony, nothing about us without us. And I would say without children, we cannot do our work. The Ombudsman's office in Sweden has been around since 1993, and it's based on the Ombudsman Act, on the legal act, and based on the Paris principles of independence. Now, one thing that we still have to remind decision makers about in Sweden is that the CRC covers all children inside the country. And we have to remind over and over again. It's children on the move, it's unaccompanied kids, it's kids who are not registered, and we have to remind decision makers on all levels that they have to be inclusive. Another thing about inclusiveness is with the CRC, and since CRC is a national law, children should be consulted. What we meet a lot is that decision makers on all levels say, well, I was a child myself, I know how it is. Now let me tell you, it was a big difference of being a child in the 60s, 70s, 80s or 90s. We have to consider today's children and not the children from 5 years ago, because things develop so quickly. So we really need to talk to kids, and we have to do it continuously. In our work, we do a lot of studies and research, and one thing that we found is kids cannot be invited as an appendix in the end. They are there from the beginning, formulating the questions, helping us to ask the right questions and see the right problems. And when we include kids, it's important to involve the groups that are actually concerned. This could be refugee children, children from ethnic or religious minorities, just to give a few examples, kids with disabilities, kids in alternative care, and children growing up in child poverty, because they are experts on their own situation and then give us a knowledge that we could never get with just a general question. And they can help us also to find very good proposals. Finally, I think it's very interesting what you said, Diane, about the platforms with kids. We have to resonate to where the kids are, not where we are. We have to communicate in a way that where the children want to be. And we found, for instance, in some of the research and during COVID, but also afterwards, discussing very sensitive matters with kids, they asked to have online meetings. As one child said, it's more equal. If I feel uncomfortable, I can leave just by turning off my phone or my computer. While the adult world believes still a lot in physical meetings, so we have a lot to learn. Finally, feedback. I have met so many kids who say they asked us about this. They asked us about city planning. They asked us about what you should do in school. And then the decision was something else. Now, will I be keen to give my opinion the next time? I will not. So that's why the feedback is so important. Democracy is built from below. Trust in society is built from below. If we want to talk about child participation, inclusiveness, it's a continuous movement. It's not one of a kind. It involves a lot of feedback. And lastly, Sweden was reviewed in the CRC last year. There were some very harsh recommendations. We are very grateful for this committee to do that. And then the government asked the Ombudsman, can you please do a child-friendly version? And they thought we were going to translate the conclusions into Swedish. And we say, hey, you know, 99% of the kids don't even know what it is. If we talk child-friendliness, it has to be on what the kids need and want and give their input, not about what the adult world think that they should. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Elizabeth, on emphasizing that true, genuine inclusivity actually involves all the children whose narratives may be invisibilized, and never forgetting how important digital access and equity, but also balancing that with digital safety of children is for hearing all these voices. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, I'm actually speeding along the conversation, as of course our esteemed panelists have been extremely comprehensive in telling us about their roles and how they were instituted. Let's move along to me asking Vitit first. Now, Vitit, would you mind, Prof, telling us a little bit more about how you may have worked with independent institutions in your different functions over time and how they have supported your work as a human rights advocate? We would love contextualized examples, not just from Prof Vitit, but also from the rest of our esteemed panelists.
Thank you very much. Let me do a quiz, particularly with the children or anybody here. The terms, the words that we use are often non-comprehensible. They are not understood. So I'm going to test whether you understand what has been mentioned and what might be discussed in terms of terminology. Who does not understand the term general comment? Hands up. General comment of the Child Rights Committee? Everybody understand? I'm not so sure, huh? I'm not so sure.
Let's see those hands up. No being shy over here.
You don't have to be shy. I'll explain it if you don't understand. But we have a problem in Thailand. We don't understand it. And even the word convention, we don't understand. In Thai, the word convention sounds like a small treaty, small agreement. But actually, a convention is a very big agreement. It's a very multi agreement, not a little one. You can't have a little convention. And general comment is an expansion of what's in the convention in terms of interpretation. For example, right to nationality, right to a nationality. It says that in the convention, but how do you know what it means? You don't quite know until it's interpreted. So the Committee on the Rights of the Child of the UN expanded that phrase, for example, to mean certain things. And it might be in a general comment. But actually, on nationality, it was another committee of the UN that expanded the understanding. And today, we are now with 26 general comments, the latest on environment and climate change. And next one will be on juvenile justice. It'll be very useful for you. So I think it's very important that we check what we use as terminology all the time. And I'm not sure whether people understand the word protocol, but I'll leave it to UNICEF and the Commissioner to explain it to other people. Because here we have acceded to, ratified, signed up to 2 protocols, but there's no time for this, all right? Secondly, life experience. Does everybody know what Suhakam is before we go to the Commissioner? Who doesn't know? Hands up. Who has ever asked a Suhakam president to say what he or she achieved during the term of office here? Anybody have asked? Now we're going to ask our friend here, ultimately. I asked the chair, I asked the president of the first outcome, what difference did you make? What do you think he said? It was a he then. What do you think he said to me, very quickly? We don't know, but I know from what he said, humbly. He said, the best thing I did was to visit the prisons. The best thing he did in the first phase of Suakam was to visit the prisons, to look at the toilets and suggest improvements for the toilets. Please think about that amidst all these words. You have to be an active commissioner, can't just sit around here. I'm a prison visitor. The UN Special Rapporteur is a prison visitor all the time, as well as juvenile facilities and so on. So we must have an active process. So I'll round up by saying we have guidance globally from this region and beyond in terms of experience, and they're summed up in terms of promotion and protection of human rights. And I'll sum them up in 5 key words, which I will leave as a present for both Suhakam and the Commissioner. And they're drawn from the experience of the UN as well as the commissions in this region. Let's work with them quickly. And they rhyme. They rhyme. Hopefully a bit of poetry helps. Number 1, advocate. Number 2, activate. Number 3, vindicate. Number 4, interrelate. And number 5, remediate. Now the UN with all its words about what we should do have about 20 entry points, but I've summed them up for you in 5 words. And let's interpret them very quickly for you from experience from this region. And there are 5 human rights commissions in this region, and now, of course, with the commissioner. First one, advocate. We have to advocate, educate on child rights, including using words that we can understand. And I'm sure a lot of people don't understand the word protocol, but I'll leave it to UNICEF and others to explain. Okay, but now people understand the word. General comment, at least, hopefully. Activate. Activate. Well, prison visits. The most important role of commissions in this region for me is prison visits and juvenile facilities and closed homes, including adopted children, or those in bostels that you still have. And very importantly, mental facilities. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Some horrific places around here in the region, including in my country. All right, so anywhere closed or semi-closed, we should visit. Active in terms of protection. Yes, protect rights, but what do you mean by protect rights? Have to be active. Thirdly, vindicate. If you are really powerful, you will litigate on behalf of children. But you don't have the power yet. But you can take complaints at least. Now, Philippines Commission that I've been watching for years would like to activate on that front in terms of vindicate, litigate. The Thai Commission can take cases to court, but very small number on the basis of consent of the victim. Whereas previously it had more power, but the power has been cut down in terms of going to court. So vindicate, but at least to claim on behalf of affected persons, children. Fourthly, interrelate. Interrelate. Well, monitoring, data collection, cooperation between different agencies, that you have to do. Check and balance in terms of information, empirical approach. And then finally, remediate. Seek remedies. Seek remedies, maybe through mediation, advice, maybe through access to courts if you can, or maybe you go to court as a friend of the court, not litigate, but give advice, what we call amicus, the power of being amicus. And in fact, in UN terms, we describe these commissions and ombudspersons as quasi-judicial. They're not courts, but they have powers which pressure for accountability. So with those in mind, happy poetry and wording, particularly with the children. Activate, remediate, vindicate, and ultimately, we have to negotiate peacefully between all groups. Thank you.
Fantastic. So well said. Thanks a lot for that, Prophet. And what you said about, commissioners needing to be on the ground when it comes to even looking into prison, sanitary dignity, menstrual dignity. That just reminds me of the fact that quite recently, under the Malaysian Selangor state budget, which is the biggest state in Malaysia, we had an absolutely brilliant allocation of almost ringgit for ensuring reusable menstrual care products for B40 girls. However, it did come out in the Hansard in Parliament that the Family Health Board, together with the Prisons Department, was supplying these reusable sanitary pads for B40 girls by having female prisoners produce them. Now, female prisoners themselves, of course, undergo severe restriction of access to menstrual as well as sanitary dignity. Is it our right to be able to be providing rights for a certain population, of course, children as a core, but at the same time, not ensuring access for other vulnerable populations? Lots to think about, right? Moving into Commissioner Beda. Now, I wanted to ask you about what are some of the main challenges that the Commission on Human Rights of Philippines has been facing when it comes to fulfilling your mandate for children, and when you reflect back on your experience, perhaps what is one thing you wish you knew then when you were coming into office, Commissioner?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the question. The Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines is one of the lowest budgeted agency of the government. This year, we were allocated by Congress around 900,000 pesos, which I think is equivalent to, I just want to check on my notes, which is equivalent to around $15.5 million. The Child Rights Center, out of that 15.5 million, the Child Rights Center receives roughly 17,000 US dollars to work on its advocacy on a nationwide scope. So the challenge, well, first is adequate funding. We are not given that much funding by our Congress. But again, thank you to NGOs, thank you to agencies like the UNICEF, thank you to the European Union and other international communities who've been helping the CHR perform our mandate. Second, we need to, there is a need for the personnel to be updated and fully equipped with the necessary skills and knowledge on how to handle children, especially when there is a complaint lodged before our office. We are given the mandate to conduct investigation, but then after the investigation, after we have concluded with our investigation, the finished product would only be an investigation report. And if ever there is a recommendation to file appropriate charges, then we refer them to the Department of Justice, or if the perpetrator is a private individual, or to the Office of the Ombudsman if the perpetrator is a government official. These two offices will then conduct preliminary investigation, or similar to the function of determining whether the case would go to court or not. Then from that stage, the Commission on Human Rights loses track as to the progress of the case. So that is the reason why the current commission, us, the 6th Commission, thought of initiating complaints on our own. The Commission on Human Rights would now want to be the nominal complainant in these cases, so that will be updated from the time it is filed to us until it reaches the court. Third would be policies and recommendations of the government must be implemented in the national level and the local government, down to the local government units. That is the role of the Commission on Human Rights. We monitor to make sure that all of the government policies which we recommended to Congress and which was later on passed into law would be implemented in the national and the local government level. As to the question, what should I have possessed prior to entering the commission, especially for being the focal commissioner of the child rights. I've been with the Office of the Ombudsman for 27 years. And my primary function then is Director for Investigation. And the Ombudsman in the Philippines, unlike from other ombudsman, they focus on graft and corruption solely perpetrated by government officials or employees, or maybe in cahoots with private individual. So I have to learn and unlearn a lot of things, especially when it comes to advocating for the rights of children. That is why right now I could proudly say that I have already learned a lot of things. I have now a deeper understanding of terms like best interest of the child and child participation. Me being the focal commissioner with the help of the Child Rights Center have laid down policies as to what would be the direction of the Commission on Human Rights for the next 5 years. And these policies will remain, hopefully, and make sure that it would come into fruition. And that I promise and commit that these things will happen during my term as the focal commissioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Commissioner Beda. From there, I'd like to move into asking Ms. Newmat. Now, of course, you have plenty of very relevant experience, particularly for Malaysia to share, because since the establishment of your office is relatively recent, perhaps you could share with us a little bit more about what were perhaps some of the first few things, the first 3 or maybe 4 important things which you did when you took office, which could form a basis for Malaysia to think about as well.
Thank you very much. I think one of the most biggest challenge for us was we were formed in the middle of pandemic. So everything needs to be established being a new office, and the budget was quite limited, like they mentioned, as well as the staff we only had 10 staff, and from the 10 staff, 6 has to be in administrative and budget, and 4 only had to be placed in the technical part. So I think that was one of the biggest. Re-establishing as an independent office had its own challenges. I mean, we like to be independent, but yet there are so many challenges. And one of the first thing, because I come from a social background, teaching and lecturing in university was my former experience. So I think I brought in a lot of social aspect into my work rather than the legal aspect. So I concentrated on getting more lawyers. Like we have 7 lawyers in office right now who does the investigation and all the legal review work. But the first thing I did was we did a baseline study across the country. We went to 8 islands, and we did want to check the status of CRP within the country, as well as how much they knew about UNCRC, which has been inactive in the country for a long, long time. So I think that was our main focus. That it started with that, all the strategies, all the plan, all the work that has been done has been with the data that was accumulated with the baseline study. And one of the things we felt was there was no connection within the stakeholders, stake actors working together, as well as there was no, each one did their own role, but they were not actually doing any preventive work. So I think prevention became one of the core areas I concentrated on. For example, we don't have a compliance department, but we do have an investigation and legal department. If there's any issue that's been brought in, then we do the investigation. But we focused mainly on compliance and enforcement as a preventive measure, because I believe if we do more preventive work, if we ensure the state is bound to the regulations and the acts, then there will be less chances of children being neglected or if their proper work is done. So our work has been a lot with child rights audits as well as investigation, like we do advanced planned child rights audits across the country. So I would say those are the areas that we really concentrated in understanding. And we also did what we call a community audit, where we, I think if you understand Maldives, we are 1% land and 99% water. So, and the islands are very scattered across geographically huge. So there are a lot of geographical challenges with the system in establishing a child protection system within the country. So every island has their own council, there is a health post, there is a desk for police, and no social work happening. So it's quite challenging in many ways. So one of the things we really started working was getting, because the Child Protection Act is stressed on agencies, actors working together, which is not what we found with the baseline. So that was one area we thought we will really work on. And we had these audits done in 10 communities where all the stakeholders were involved with it. So after every audit, we also had a stakeholder meeting where we discussed what we have, like, what are the core areas that needs to be working and for them to work together. So that was, I think, one of the key main functions that we did to understand the status of the child protection system within the country, as well as what we need to do in future in getting. So with that, so many other activities did follow up that needs to be done by our office as well as by other stake agencies. So I would say those three, but for tomorrow, I have more that I would like to share. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Ms. Newmarth. I think especially considering the geographical challenges, of course, Malaysia is a very different landscape, but at the same time, we do have plenty of islands, plenty of more remote areas where access and services, particularly for children, are very much limited. Moving back to Diane. Now, Mrs. Diane, what are some of the main challenges that the Jamaica's Children Advocate has experienced and seen, particularly some learning journeys which were gleaned from, especially during the pandemic lockdowns, and looking at where we are now in 2024?
All right, so I think one of the major challenges is the cultural approach in relation to how children are perceived, and also the very low priority that's attached to the issue of children's rights generally. So we're very strong in believing that all human beings are entitled to rights. However, when it comes to children, there is almost a view that because they're little people, they have little rights or none at all. And so that impacts the societal responses and the wide-scale abuse that we still continue to see of children in different circumstances. And we also see a stereotyping of the types of abuses that children are facing. So predominantly, girls are predisposed to sexual violence, and boys are more predisposed to other forms of physical violence. And so we see them featuring more as victims of, fights, very harsh actions in terms of corporal punishment at the hands of parents and other persons who are in positions of authority. The other challenge, as far as I see it, is the political football that children are used as in terms of bringing attention to children's issues. And what that means is that we have a lot of talk about the importance that ought to attach to children, and there's a lot of blame game in terms of what one political administration did vis-a-vis what the other one didn't do, and what the other one is going to do vis-a-vis what the other one has not done well. And so we have a lot of talk in the space, but it doesn't necessarily translate into actionable steps that are going to increase the priority and the actions that encircle children and the importance that their voices and rights really ought to occupy. In terms of another issue, therefore, is that it impacts the ability of the children's advocates sometimes to get the national buy-in as to why we're even having discussions around children's rights. So we have a very robust and comprehensive legislative framework which gives the children's advocate not just the opportunity to make recommendations and to talk about children's rights, but we also have the legal authority to institute proceedings in court to hold persons accountable when they violate children's rights or operate in a way that's contrary to their best interests. But we still have this particular challenge because of, I think, the lack of consensus as to all hands on deck in ensuring that the talk translates into meaningful action. And so those are the three top challenges that I would say exist, which we need to continue focusing our efforts on to ensure that the importance and the priority that ought to attach to children is in fact upscaled.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Diane. I think that's a very relevant and sobering insight, particularly the point that you made about the political football that's made out of children's rights. I think we see a lot of that, particularly in a multicultural society like Malaysia's, where we have continuing debates, etc., around, for example, just one key issue, the banning outright of child marriage, right? So that's one, at least locally relevant. From there, moving on to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I'd love to sort of end this panel discussion area of the session before we hand it over to any questions from the audience by you sharing with us some of the biggest institutional challenges that you experience in your position as ombudsperson, as well as what you learned from it all and you hope will be seen, put in place by the next.
Thank you very much. I would like to start with Diane said about little people with little rights. I was very hopeful when I assumed office in 2018 because the Convention on the Rights of the Child should be national law. I think we all put a lot of hopes when Parliament took that decision. And we've had a massive training campaign of all government agencies on all levels. And there was a huge commitment from the government. And honestly, I'm frustrated because the ones who really started to implement the convention were the ones that are not obliged to do it, namely the Sports Association of Sweden, the Football Association, the Scout movement, etc., while it has been so slow. And I think it's a mixture. Which other law could not be implemented? Let's look on the social services, for instance, and the best interest of the child. Just finding that simple routine. Was the child listened to? What was the opinion of the child? The decision hasn't to be exactly what the child thought there and then, but it must be documented. And how did we then reach the decision on the best interest of the child? Even simple things like that take such a long time. We've seen the same thing in the court system. The court system was very reluctant of the convention becoming national law. You would not believe the issues that they raised before it was passed. Now the good thing, well, that's where I love lawyers. Once the law was passed, now they follow it. But it's again to protect children in the legal process, not from the legal process. To protect children in court, not from the court. We are not there yet. So for me, it's a lot of frustration that what we all thought, the Ombudsman's office, a lot of the parliamentarians, and not least civil society, it did not materialize. And I think the weak point, and that is that the Ombudsman's office can still not push legal issues in court. And I think if we want to speed up the process, to make people do the job the right way, there need to be court decisions on principal issues, such as in Sweden we have a lot of different kind of schools, but we never pay even if they're private. So every child should be able to choose their own school. Now with children with disabilities or children who might come from another country face a lot of excuses why they are not admitted. We would need a court case to rule on that. We would need court cases on the child's right to be heard in custody cases, etc. And I think part of my frustration is we hoped a lot. We thought the legal instrument would be there. It lacks a lot of implementation, but without a proper legal process, the change that we all would like to see will not take place.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Elizabeth. Yes, it's not just about getting those laws in place, but then seeing them enacted. In Malaysia, for example, we've recently seen some very encouraging new amendments for the SOAC, the Sexual Offences Against Children Act, whereby children will be placed under much less pressure and mental distress in the interrogation process itself. So those are some encouraging things, but once again, it's all about making it equitable and accessible to all children, not just some children within the system. With that, ladies and gentlemen, our panelists have been fantastic. As we do have a couple of more minutes, I'm now going to open it up to the floor. If any of you has a question, please kindly just raise your hand and also come over to the mics which are placed at the middle of the conference hall and quickly introduce yourself and address your question to whoever it is you may want to ask it. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, I see a hand raised by, I think, yes, a gentleman.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Koo. I'm a lawyer. And thank you very much to the panel for your different experiences. I think in Malaysia, one of the things when we talk about rights, whether it's human rights or child rights, is that somebody who is not so keen on emphasis on rights will then talk about responsibilities and try to remind people that you want to stress on rights, but then there are all these responsibilities. So even from an ASEAN context, if you look at the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration, there's a whole section on rights, and then there's a section on responsibilities. So perhaps if I can address the question to the Commissioner from Philippines and Ajahn Vitit, it's always a pleasure to see you. How do you address this issue? How do you come back to the people who want to talk not so much about rights, but on responsibilities? But of course, I'm not closing the question to just them. Even from other contexts in Jamaica, in the Maldives, and in Sweden as well. How do you deal with this issue? Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent question, Andrew. Vitit or either Commissioner Beda, who would like to go first?
Often it's very political. And that's why they raise it like that. And we have to deal with good politics to address the not so good politics. But as we all know, I mean, if you study the idea of rights, even through media, etc., rights are complemented by duties or responsibilities. However, we're not just talking about rights and responsibilities, we're talking about human rights, meaning that there are international standards to enable us, including children, to advocate a sense of responsiveness and responsibility from the state. And these countries, including Malaysia, have committed themselves already to many, many elements of an international framework. Treaties, universal peer review that you'll hear about tomorrow maybe. Global policies like Sustainable Development Goals, which also integrate some elements of rights. So we're not denying responsibilities, but we're saying that when we advocate rights, and particularly human rights, there is a certain universal or at least international framework behind to enable us to understand this relationship in terms of if you want to limit rights, and that's what certain authorities wish to do, by claiming responsibilities from our side, the people or children, what is the balancing act? And sometimes the balancing act is not achieved at the national level. And that's why you have to look at the international level in terms of balancing act. And that's what it's about. I mean, we don't neglect responsibilities, but there is a balance. You can't claim absolute responsibilities by people just like that, arbitrarily. Right? You can't claim absolute limitations on freedom of expression from children or anybody else, but there are standards. So basically, if you go back to the discourse, we're not in denial. We see the balancing act, and there are standards to guide us, particularly number one, there are various human rights which cannot be limited by national security. And national security is often used to invoke, to validate the claim of duties and responsibilities on our side. Such as the freedom from torture, it's absolute. Right to life, absolute. You cannot penalize children under 18 by death penalty. Even though, congratulations Malaysia, you've just amended your law to abolish the mandatory death penalty. But I think you should abolish it all actually, and not to increase the whipping, etc. But that's the next step, right? Number two, many rights such as expression are subject to limitations on the basis of some obligations and responsibilities. And we have a test internationally to ensure a degree of balance and objectivity. If a state claims that the right to freedom of expression and assembly is to be limited, the state must prove at least three elements internationally, which is this balancing act with responsibilities. Number one, the state must prove that it is doing something openly, non-arbitrarily, meaning the principle of legality, legal according to international law. Number two, the state must prove that it's acting necessarily and proportionately to the risks at stake. Real risks or potential risks, but not fake risks. We have too many fake, fictitious risks and threats being invoked by national security or public order on the basis of our responsibility to respond to the state. But actually the state has to prove necessity and proportionality. And thirdly, the state has to prove legitimacy in terms of aims. It has to be in accordance with democracy. Not just any old responsibility under authoritarian rule or military rule, coup d'etat, etc., shrinking public space. So we're not in denial, but we do advocate a sense of balance and equilibrium. And that's why international standards, including the Child Rights Convention, come into play very nicely to ensure that we have a good discourse as well as good interaction in terms of full respect for the rights of all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Professor. If you have a quick response as well, Commissioner Beda.
Just a short reaction. Your observation, sir, is very valid. You know, people would raise responsibilities when somebody would invoke his specific rights. In the Philippines, restrictions to rights come in so many forms. One is there are laws. We have laws which restricts these specific rights. So, for example, right to expression. We have a law which limits this expression, and that is why what the Commission on Human Rights is doing, Congress, that maybe there is a need for them to look into these laws, whether these laws are no longer applicable. We are trying to, you know, advocate that certain provisions of the law on libel should be amended so that it will not restrict the freedom of expression. But definitely your observations is very, very true. And I couldn't agree more with what the professor has said. It's a balancing act, and it is really the government, in the case of the Philippines, the government and the Congress, who should put this balance to make sure that claims of responsibility should not be used in furtherance of a specific right of individual. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much for emphasizing that, Commissioner Beda. And ladies and gentlemen, if there are no other questions from the floor, there happens to be one more. Let's take one final one, and then we'll no longer stand between you and lunch. Yes, over to you. Please briefly introduce yourself and who you'd like to direct the question towards.
I'm Ong from Penang Women's Development Corporation. I just wanted to take off from what you mentioned, our panelists from Jamaica, talk about this political football. Yeah, so this is of interest because we know most, I mean, there are no politicians here, but we know most of them are very short-term, you know, their goals are very short-term. From experience, what is it that trigger them or say, yes, this is something that is we want to do and we would like to do and make it sustainable? Because as we change and all that, government change, executives change and all that, you see things change very fast. You know, maybe from the panelists, what was it that triggered them? They say, okay, this is something that we want to do it and we like to, you know, keep it long term. Thank you.
All right, if I could respond very quickly to that. So thanks for the question. And I think it's a two-pronged approach. The first is that there is almost an obligation that they feel because of the commitments that we've made as a country. Certainly within Jamaica, we take very seriously the fact that we are leaders in the Caribbean and that we have committed at the international level to various conventions and protocols. And we know that there are watchdog entities who are looking to see what we're doing locally. So when we link the actual duties that we have committed to with the fact that we could get a negative review, politicians don't like negative reviews, so it serves as a very persuasive tool, if you will, to remind them periodically that, look, we agreed to this, so we need to do that. The other thing as well that I think works very well, it's to make the politicians, for whichever side, feel as if they're the ones actually making the decision, if you know what I'm saying. So it's about being very strategic in how you present an argument. So you, for example, as the children's advocate may say, this is a systemic issue that needs to be dealt with. We know it hasn't been dealt with for quite a while, and you're going to be that amazing minister who finally does something about this particular issue. So you stroke the ego a little bit, yeah? And you use it as a tool of great persuasion to say, I will do the work in terms of looking at the data, in terms of looking at the issue, in terms of looking at the best practice, and I will put together for you a recommendation that will have you deal with a very long-standing systemic issue, which will be to your credit that under your tenure, this particular issue or objective was achieved. So I think that's how we work.
Fantastic. Thank you. Great question and great response from Diane. And it's all about building that culture of institutional memory as we go forth, right? Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, a huge round of applause, please, for my fantastic and esteemed panelists who have been so generous in sharing more about all our responsibilities for a child-friendly approach. And with that, this panel session on the first is concluded. I hand over back to Ms. MC.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dimina, and and the 5 international panelists that we have there. Personally, I think it's very, very impactful, and I do want to have a quick chat with almost all of you a little bit after this, so that I can delve more on each of your roles as well as what we can do here in Malaysia. Because particularly I'm from the Legal Affairs Division, so we do work a lot with SWACAM as well. So I'm sure there's a lot more collaboration that can be done as well. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Mina, and all of our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the time now is 1:39 p.m. and it's now time for lunch break. We'll go for lunch from 1:30 until 2:20. Lunch is available at the lower ground floor, at LG floor, and we reconvene for our next session around 2:20 p.m. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. See you again at 2:20.